We are both joining you from our home offices, despite the banner that is here. The coronavirus has taken a toll on all of us. We are almost all working from home, but Commissioner Breton is our guest today, and I would very warmly like to welcome him. Thierry Breton is, of course, the Commissioner for Industrial Policy and the Single Market, and he is joining us, I think, today from his office in the Berlaymont. Welcome,
yes.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for welcoming me.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us to this event today. We want to discuss industrial policy, of course, and the single market in the times of COVID-19, so in the times of the coronavirus. And I guess before I come with my first question, let me give a quick housekeeping rule for our online audience. If you would like to ask a question, please go on the webpage slido, sli.do, and type in EU 2020, and then post your question, ideally with your name. You can also vote questions up or down, and we will make sure that towards the end of this call and this event, we can actually ask some live questions to the Commissioner. So thank you, Commissioner, again for joining us. And I think perhaps the first question we would like to ask you is, the single market is now called by many already prematurely, of course, is called almost dead. And I think one example they are giving is that medical supply is not always delivered across borders. Can you give us an update on where we are for medical supply deliveries across borders?
Yes, first of all, again, thank you for organizing this online event. Thank you for the one who are watching and listening. And thank you for the initiative, both of you, Bruegel and FT. And I really think that in this extremely difficult and challenging time, it's very important to keep us updated as much as we can. And thank you for the role you play here while helping us to inform live what's happening and what we do, including, by the way, to kill some fake news like the one you just mentioned, saying that the internal market was almost dead, which is obviously not at all the case, as you know. But the reality is, yes, in one sense, and I will take a slight part of your question. It's true that at the beginning of let's say, the understanding that Europe will be now the center of the pandemic, and this, of course, happened roughly something like 10 days ago. Everyone realized that the pandemic now was not only anymore in China, which is decreasing, as you know, Korea, Iran, Italy, but now it was really becoming a global pandemic, and again, Europe being now, for the time being, a center of it. So reaction, as you've seen, has been at the beginning a little bit de-coordinated, but let me tell you that together with the President, Ursula von der Leyen, we worked days and nights to make sure that we stay all together. So if I want to come back to your question, the first thing that we have seen was two actions which have been taken mainly by France and Germany to make sure that they understood what was happening in their own stocks. And why did they do this? And I think it's important for all of you to realize that we have seen at the beginning of the so-called crisis in Europe, we have seen some extremely dangerous and bad behaviors by some trying to buy PPE, personal protection equipment, everywhere they could and sell it on the black market, which is totally unacceptable. And that's why, in order to avoid this, both government in France and Germany decided to stop all this, to understand what were the stocks, and it's true that at the same time, they decided to ban export of this equipment and to have a clear view of what happened. By the way, the clear view, I have it myself also. I want to see on this document. I want to see exactly what we have now available in Europe, what kind of stocks, hubs, and everything, and this is updated on a daily basis. Then we discussed very intensively with both France and Germany, and then, as you know, the ban has been released. But on the other hand, it's true that it has been decided that, of course, for all EU, this is why I was correcting a bit what you said, all the EU, we have now an external ban. Again, if somebody wants to export some of this equipment outside of EU, you need to have a very specific requirement in order to do this. So in between, it's true that also, so that's for the equipment. It's true that in between, we have seen also that's something different, some decision taken by some governments when everyone realized that you may have a peak and have this a curve of a peak that could be expected in every of our country. And here, of course, we are working extensively in the Commission with my services to update on a daily basis with all the information we could grab when we could expect the peak in every single EU country. That's extremely important for us, and especially for me, who has been in charge of coordinating of the supply of this equipment, to know where we could expect in the following day, following weeks, following 2 weeks, following months, the supply of the equipment. But in between, yes, it's true that some countries decided to close their border just because reaction to confine their people, and we discussed with them. Of course, we believe it was not the right decision, especially, by the way, because if you do this, we cannot send the product that they need or they will need. And then, as you've seen, in between, most of the European countries now have taken decision to ask their people to stay home or to confine the people. And I would like to use this opportunity that you give me to tell everyone that it is extremely, extremely important to respect these rules. That's extremely important. Extremely important because, again, in this war, if I may say, against the virus, the key objective for us, of course, is protecting, of course, our people, our citizens, protecting, of course, the health personnel, nurses, doctors, and everywhere, avoiding to have too many people coming at the same time in our hospitals. And of course, in order to do this, is to be able to manage a little bit better the peaks, to reduce it. And that's why, again, staying at home is extremely important. It's true that, I mean, you see that in any country, this is a very difficult decision to take. If you look at what happened, for example, in the United States, it's still difficult. You have already some states who took some drastic decisions, including, by the way, in California, where this is not totally forbidden. It's not exactly the same thing in other countries. So what you see in the United States, you have seen in Europe. Not all the states took the same decision. Some close everything, cities, borders. So, I mean, this is just a human reaction. It is true also in the UK, where you see that the final decision is not yet taken. So please, in this time, just all of us, we need definitely to be responsible. Where solidarity is key, action is key, but what is most important is making sure that we give the right information.
Right. Can I push you a little bit and then give also to Sam a question? I mean, a bit more on specifically on the medical supply. I mean, as you said, the peaks in the infection waves will be at different moments in different countries. I mean, do we have concrete schemes in place that would allow us to actually ship ventilators or from one country to another, depending on where the peaks are?
That's exactly what I'm doing. But now, you know, and I want all of you to understand how I decided after receiving this responsibility for President von der Leyen to handle the situation. The first thing, I need to have accurate data as much as I can, and it's difficult. I'm a scientist myself. Without any data, you cannot try to handle this kind of situation. But I need to have true data as much as we can, efficient data. Where? First, in terms of procurement. So the first thing I started to do, I show you this map, was to see where are located today the factories in Europe. And by the way, I include also UK because I don't forget that UK is our friends and we are working together. I want you to work together with UK. That's extremely important. So I put all the factories and hubs here. Then I call myself together with my team every single factory to see what they had in stocks. And that's this sheet is updated on a daily basis. What they have in stock, how is the production line, how they could increase the production line. And believe me, first I would like to tell you that I had fantastic commitment and answers for all the industries working in Europe on this. You cannot imagine, they work day and night, they try to be imaginative, but now I have a clear view of the stocks, I have a clear view of the production, I have a clear view of how you could enhance the production for any kind of equipment, including, by the way, ventilators. The second thing, of course, and it was, of course, to try to see, to forecast. That's the most difficult part, of course, for us, and the most, let's say, difficult in many sense. Try to forecast the evolution of the pandemic. So here, we have already an internal GRC research center where they work, but obviously the figures that, you know, you have some models, obviously that we use in order to try to predict, unfortunately, how the disease will evolve in the following days. And again, I do this for every single European country. But then, of course, we took a decision, which was, again, I repeat, the right decision that everyone should respect, staying at home. And of course, now we will need to have the right figures in order to take in consideration the fact that I hope that every single European citizen will follow these rules. And here, in order to make sure that I have the right tools, I decided to work with the big platforms and the telco operators. So I called myself, the head of the platforms, had many calls with Mark Zuckerberg. By the way, we are on a daily, almost on a daily call together, Mark and myself, trying to use the data that we could get from the platforms, trying also to use the data that we could get from the telco operators, of course, on an anonymous way. We are extremely careful to use it while respecting GDPR, but using metadata just to be able to put it in our algorithm using artificial intelligence, and then to have a daily basis, much more efficient, and to be able to try to see when this peak may occur, and try to have as precisely as possible then the need that will be our in order to channel this procurement. So that's why again that's how I work with data. So again, my message here that we will have the tools to channel PPE, joint procurement on one hand within the member states, and of course, and rescue instrument, which is done by the Commission itself to order materials and allocate again these materials following again the needs that we can already predict and forecast. But again, it's a moving situation, but the good news, if I may say so, is that I have the tools in place. And here again, the platforms, the telco operators, I'm in daily contact with them, are playing a very important role. And I think that we learned a lot how to work together here to have this right set of data to be able to do the mission that is our mission today for the EU.
There have been, Commissioner, there have been reports that companies that want to move into production of medical equipment, in fact, newly moving into products to provide these products that are desperately needed, potentially could encounter barriers, for example, intellectual property barriers, challenges by larger companies to their ability to produce this equipment. First of all, have you been able to investigate these reports? Do you think there's any substance to it? And what barriers are you seeing to the ramping up, the huge ramping up of production of medical equipment within the European Union that we now need to see?
Okay, so there's two aspects of your question, and I will take maybe the second one and then the first one. The first thing is that, of course, needless to say, we are in a very unusual situation. We have seen that the French president said that we were at war. I use this also myself, saying that we are at war against the virus. So we have to think, and believe me, that's what I'm telling to everyone. And I would like to tell you that the team here is doing an unbelievable job. And if some of you believe that in the Parliament we have most civil servants thinking only regulation, it's not the case. I force, and we have now people being able to anticipate and to think out of the box. For example, we know that we will need to have other production lines, both for PPE and also for ventilators of this kind of equipment. And in order to do this, very early, 10 days ago, I decided to call all the big companies, first the textile companies, but not only, to see if they could use some of their production line, which are not used, obviously, for the product that they usually design and product, and to transform it to be able to produce very quickly and urgently the equipment that we need. Should be respiratory protection, so eye protection, body protection, hand protection, and ventilators. To give you some examples, and again, I really want to tell you, because again, we are not, I just want to report the solidarity, which is increasing. You cannot imagine in Europe and on a worldwide basis. And I will give you later on also few reports that I could give you with the US, between our friends in the US or in China. But the solidarity first in Europe. LVMH immediately, and his and the chairman and CEO Bernard Arnault decided to stop its factories, mainly meant for perfume, and to change everything to produce hand sanitized product, which were extremely important for hospital, but also for now most of us. And it's done now. They're producing a huge number, and we will be able to supply. To give you another example, of course, everybody know Inditex. Inditex is the largest textile fashion company based in Spain. You know, Zara, for example, and so I had a long talk with Pablo Isla, with the CEO. He's doing a fantastic job. Trying now, we had many discussions together, trying to change some of its products online to be able to answer to some of these needs, both in Europe but also in China. Another example is Helena Elmerson. She's, as you know, the CEO of H&M in Sweden. Fantastic cooperation, also doing the same thing. Another one in Italy, like Pier Paolo Zani, is a CEO of BSL. He's increasing like hell his production. He's also transforming a very old line. So I have many examples like this, and I could spend 1 hour to tell you the examples and the solidarity that we see here. And then for the first question, in Italy, for example, also a small company having developed 3D capacities to be able to produce some specific valves which are needed, key component for the ventilators. They developed this, and it's true and by the way, they give it for free for hospitals. And it's true that we may have some discussion with the patents, but in the patent registration, there is a specific condition that under certain condition, you can again extract yourself of the right that you need to pay. And of course, we will apply these conditions and rules.
So there are specific exceptions under patent laws, which is in the power of the Commission to ensure that companies don't get effectively sued for making badly needed medical equipment that happens to infringe on another company's patent. This is an active area for you to look at.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Obviously, the other area of concern, or one particular area of concern, is this question of border interruptions, in particular long queues at certain borders, long lines of vehicles, and interruptions of shipments of products across the border. I wondered what steps are you able to take to ensure that medical equipment doesn't get stuck at borders and gets to where it's needed quickly? Is this a particular area of concern right now? We've seen, for example, long queues between the German-Polish border, Polish-Lithuanian border as one example. Obviously, Austria, Italy is another area. What specific steps can you take to make sure that equipment is getting through the single market quickly?
So that's a very important question, and of course we have roughly I think few countries which are still in this situation. So first we need to evaluate. So let me tell you how we do it. The first thing is that we are monitoring now everything in the EU. I'm trying to use all the tools I may have to be able to follow this. So we are using Copernicus with a specific point on the critical borders to see if we have some usual line of trucks, and we are following this just to make sure that we can here again anticipate and react very quickly. And again. What you say, it's a concern of all of us. So first, evaluating the situation from our side. Secondly, of course, we are in direct contact with health ministers everywhere, and also industry ministers. I will come back in a few minutes on this. And when there is a request and that's the equipment is not coming, we are making sure that we are informed directly. And of course, then if there is a problem, I intervene myself or my team, and then we try to see how we could solve the situation. But of course, the countries who did this understand that at the end of the day, it's not in their own interest. So I am very confident that we'll be able to solve this issue. And in between, again, we are putting, based on the information that we have of the monitoring of the specific areas on the border when we see a problem, we are putting green corridors in order to make sure that the flow of goods could go both sides without any problems. But this is taking into account, and I'm confident that we will solve this issue in the following days. And by the way, as you know, tomorrow I was insisting with the President of Croatia to say that it was important to convene a Compet Council, and I'm happy to inform you that it has been agreed. So we will have a Compet Council tomorrow. I really wanted to have this with all the ministers of industries of the 27 member states. There will be, of course, in video. And this is an issue that in the minute issue that I want to discuss that will be put on the table, obviously tomorrow.
So can I ask a question related to the broader industrial policy strategy and the kind of companies that we have or do not have in Europe? I mean, there's now a very strong emerging debate that perhaps we have run too dependent on countries outside of Europe in the production of critical equipments. such as medical equipments, but also more broadly that we are too dependent in our value chains on China, on other countries. I mean, do we need to rethink what is being produced here in Europe, especially in such critical areas such as medical equipment? And if I can add one dimension, of course, there's the big question of the development of vaccines. Of course, there is the story of last week, where a German company, CureVac, was supposed to be bought by the United States, which also raises lots of industrial policy questions. And so here we had a company, unfortunately it stayed here and is ready to serve, of course, the global market. But can you say a bit more on the production texture and the companies that we have, and what can be done, what should we do differently in the future to have critical companies here in Europe, so to be able to quickly ramp up supply if needed?
Okay, so first, as you remember very well, because by the way, this is why we were supposed to have this this live session together when we decided to do it. I presented together with some of my colleagues a few weeks ago the industrial strategy that we are working on almost since the very first day I joined the commission. And you remember, I don't want to come back on this, but I will just highlight few items. You remember that the presentation that was made, I strongly insisted on the fact that first we need to work more and more on industrial ecosystems, which is important. And it was before, of course, the crisis hit Europe. And also, I mentioned, and you remember that very well, and especially your colleague from the FT, because we spoke a lot about it, that we were already saying that we were entering into a so-called quote-unquote post-globalization era, and explaining also that in this vision that we had, it was with us, of course, it is a trend, and I'm coming myself from the industry, so I know exactly that this trend started already a few years ago, and in many boards of companies, saying that maybe, yes, we went too far in globalization. Yes, now we need to take into account things like being too much dependent on one country, one region, one company, saying also that now we need to take into account also the CO2 emission, carbon footprint, price of the CO2, and then of course adding the data evolution or revolution, call it the way you want. Everything will change in terms of production, in terms of services, adding also the circular economy. So everything was pushing to review the organization partially of our supply chain. This was, of course, before this very situation. So now, obviously, needless to tell you that with the magnitude of what altogether, when I say altogether, it is the planet. It is the planet we have to cope with. Yes, definitely. It will be a before and an after. Hopefully, the human price will be limited. Hopefully. The economic price will be probably high. And of course, a lot of things will change one way or the others. Look at, for example, some of the sectors that I'm following very carefully here: tourism, transportation, airline. You see, obviously, the situation, and you see also that some member states are already saying and I'm grateful of the work that my colleague Margaret Vestager is doing in order to change very quickly or to apply very quickly the fact that the state heads could come immediately. That's extremely important. You heard, like me, that in some member states, some are already saying that we may have some partial or total nationalization of companies in order to pass this difficult period. So just to tell you that yes, obviously we will have a before and an after. But coming back to your broader question, you're absolutely right. While managing myself in my responsibility, which has been taken to me, even to me, the supplies and all the discussion that we had, I discovered, and to tell you the truth, I was not aware of this, that in many fields, we have probably not enough capacities of medication, or not enough, at least in Europe, that we will probably need to review this after the crisis.
Specifically on the same theme, Commissioner, the issue of medical supplies in terms of medicines, pharmaceuticals, there's clearly question marks about Europe's reliance on imports from outside the European Union for key ingredients in medicines, and whether Europe has enough domestic capacity if there are interruptions of imports from other parts of the world of key medical ingredients. I wondered what your focus is, and how focused are you on this particular issue? Do you see it as a genuine problem, or are you relaxed about this?
No, I mean, first, it's too early for me to say and to enter into this. I could tell you that I manage the crisis on a daily basis. But I could give you one information to that it could be the President von der Leyen had a discussion yesterday with the Prime Minister of China, and good discussion. And as you know, when China was struggling in this very situation at the beginning of the year, we immediately took the decision to send 56 tons of materials, equipment, ventilators, protection equipment, everything we could to help China in this very situation. And we put also a lot of money on the table, more than 250 million euros. And now, of course, that hopefully China is hopefully now decreasing a lot in the impact on the human impact on the disease. We are grateful that China is sending back what we did, and this is a truly international cooperation, exactly the way we need to behave. And of course, and now I have been designated as being the communication part between Europe and China with the Minister of Industry in China, and I will get in contact with him now immediately to discuss all this, supplies, how we could work together, and that's important. But on the other side, I just wanted to mention this because again, this is a problem which impacts all the planet. And just one word on what's happening now in the US. Obviously, I mean, this virus is moving from east to west, and now, unfortunately, I'm afraid to say that the next big continent which will maybe impacted is definitely North America. We'll see for South America, but we are in contact also with our American friends. I'm in contact personally with a lot of players in the US, and mainly, as I mentioned to you, the platforms. Let me give you some examples, a few examples. We are unfortunately a little bit in advance versus our American friends, and like the Chinese were in advance versus us. So we learn together. And I've been the first to ask Mark Zuckerberg directly and personally to ask him in our very often conversations that we have. Mark, I need your support here in 3 dimensions. I said first, you know, our European fellow citizens, we stay home, and our children, our kids, we stay home, and of course they need to socialize, so they will need your platform more than ever. So please, Mark, I said, help us to because of the big role you may play, give us some support to make sure that everyone will understand that it is their responsibility to stay home. And I said it would be great if you could have a ban or something that when you enter into your favorite Facebook or Instagram or whatever account, you will have something, a banner mentioning please, if your government is asking you to stay home, it is extremely important. Please respect social distance and so on, and he responds favorably. And I understand that he will may do it within the following hours or days. Ask him also, Mark, we need now you to spend enormous resources to make sure that we avoid fake news. And we had some example. We know exactly that we have to fight against this also. And it's done. I saw, for example, yesterday or the day before yesterday, I saw that on this platform, but also on others, some of the good news were erased, and it was important to maintain the good news. I called him, and it has been a mistake. I corrected him. They have to enhance their resources in order to monitor this. The third thing I said, we need to work also with our own data centers, research centers, algorithm team, AI teams, to see how we could, on an anonymized way, some data, we could be metadata, which could be used. And now we have teams working together. And now I understand that based on this information and let's say collaboration that we established, they will use it now in the US. But just my word is another example. For example, is that we realized that 2 or 3, 4 days ago. Of course, you know that one of my previous jobs was to be a chairman of a big telco operator, so I was very concerned. I was scared a little bit to see that since everybody is staying at home, teleworking, watching TVs or movies or on your favorite platform, including of course Netflix, and you know that Netflix is using a large bandwidth. I was afraid to see that maybe some of our networks may not be able to support of this. So I launched my investigation, and I saw that it was in some areas a little bit critical. So then I called immediately Netflix CEO. He was, by the way, he told me that he was confined in California, which is the first state to be totally confined. You know, it's Red Hastings. He's at home, but I told him, Red, you know, we need. Every single now in Europe is all your customers is great are using HD. Maybe if we have some areas of some countries where network is too could be to mobilize and maybe entering into dangerous zone, you could by default not offer your service HD but SD, and I mean that's a great idea. We're working with this. I will have a call again tonight with him, but I think we'll be able to do this. So we have also cooperations, I mean, on both sides. This is a global war.
Can I just push you a little bit though on this medical question? The question I had is about imports of medical ingredients, medicine ingredients, pharmaceutical ingredients into Europe from China and India in particular, and the question of whether there could be interruptions because of the needs in those countries, especially India, the domestic needs. How vulnerable, in which particular product areas is Europe vulnerable in this, and what are you doing to address this?
So we have, and to answer very clearly on this question, together with my colleague Stella Kyriakides, by the way, who is doing also a fantastic job. She has daily call with all the Minister of Health, but we decided to have together, Stella and myself, a weekly call with all the pharmaceutical companies in Europe, industrialists, to make sure, like we did for the equipment, we do the same thing for medicine, and then we will have again our weekly video conference tomorrow with all the industry in pharmaceutical industries in Europe. We are monitoring this very carefully, and we don't see any problems so far. So we are monitoring it. So my answer is that this is well handled, but again, we are doing this on a weekly basis. We have a lot of stocks in Europe, so we don't see any issue. But again, we are monitoring this on a weekly basis. One point you mentioned is true. We have to watch carefully, of course, India, which is a continent, of course, and we have to watch carefully what's happening in India. I hope one day we will not have to help India, but we have to. This is why we have to be prepared again to react on a global basis. Again, I repeat, responsibility and solidarity as the two keywords here.
So thank you, Commissioner. So we have a lot of questions already on Slido online. Lots of people asking questions, and so I would like to just give you a few of the questions from our audience, and perhaps you the shorter your answers on the individual questions can be, the more.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Okay, so one question by Paola Tama is about the next months. So she's saying, we know this is a question of months, not weeks. Italy will have an extended lockdown. What's phase 2? And also, what are your plans for when the lockdown ends?
So it's a good question from Paola, but from Politico. Hello, Paola. The question is again, how we see the evolution in Italy, to make sure that I understand well.
Yeah, I mean, what's the phase 2 of the whole crisis? I mean, how long will the lockdowns last, and how do we get out of the lockdowns, basically?
I really cannot understand. I'm sorry, cannot answer this question. I understand the question, but cannot answer the question. For what we have seen, the experience that we have is roughly in some countries who are hopefully now behind this crisis, like as I mentioned, China in the Wuhan region and area, and Korea. So it goes pretty fast. But again, I'm not a doctor myself, so it will be difficult for me to say. But of course, what I can tell you is that in terms of activity or economical activity, that including in Italy, the activity didn't stop, and I'm very impressed. First, by the discipline of Italian citizens, the fact that factories are still working, they organize themselves pretty well. So of course, then we will increase again the production. We take some weeks, but I cannot answer precisely this question.
Okay, a second question is by a person, Vincenzo Belletti. And it's a very specific question. It's about whether the EU, the European Commission, will support the action of the 3D printing industry, which is apparently ready to help the healthcare sector with a shortage of ventilators.
Yes, yes, definitely, and together with my colleague Maya Gabriel, so we are supporting this. By the way, I would like to mention also that the answer is yes. We are launching also a call for tender for many initiatives in Europe with SMEs, startups, and everything. So this has been launched today with a pretty big amount of money. I think it's 80 or 85 million euros, something like that. And again, this we will have the result very quickly, and we will support all kind of initiatives. But of course, this is taking into account this. Specific activities in 3D. So the answer is yes, and it's done. Launched.
Very good. So a third question is a bit broader, and it asks about how will you ensure that the current crisis does not lead to investment in polluting sectors, locking in future climate effects and future economic crisis? It's the most popular question on the feed, actually.
You mean, what do you mean by polluting? Polluting?
Well, I mean, I don't know what Mr. Anonymous means, but 34 people have actually voted in favor of that question. So I think it's the question whether now the investment that is being done is actually more investment in polluting sectors. So are we investing in the wrong sectors now to get out of the health crisis, and will we lock in permanently negative climate effects?
No, but to be clear, to tell you the reality, the Green Deal is not over, huh? And again, we should deliver and we should work on an ever greener solutions. But I don't have this information at my level. I will check. In terms of ventilators, I don't see how it could have an impact. Maybe in textile, but for the discussion I had, I really don't think so. I really don't think. But of course, I will monitor it, because again, we are in the Green Deal strategy, and we will have to make sure that everything is going in this direction.
Commissioner, just thinking this through. If you have major sectors like the airlines and the considerable, putting it politely, facing considerable challenges, clearly there will be a big push now to water down some of the green commitments that the Commission wishes to impose on these companies. For example, the expansion of the emissions trading scheme to aviation. If these companies are in serious trouble of going bust, many of them, then at the same time to start piling new regulations which aim to drive down emissions on them at the same time will obviously enhance and increase the pressure on them. So I wondered, how do you respond to the inevitable lobbying you're going to come under to back away from some of the key areas of focus for the Commission, given the pain and stress that's going on in the corporate sector right now?
I understand your question, but I should tell you that, and I spoke to many airline CEOs, I understand your question. They are not at all in this mood, believe me. This is not their concern, at all. Their concern is that for some of them, they will have to shut down, partially, of course, their airlines, including, of course, their obligations to use slots. And as you know, we have answered positively on this, of course, to answer to the problem that they had. But they are not yet, unfortunately, but we have to be extremely honest here, in this question, which will be a question for the recovery mode. We are not in the recovery mode. We are now in the management of the situation for airlines, for the people, for employees, and also for passengers. So too early to answer and to have this concern, I
think. Can we talk a bit about whether all of this can be turned into an opportunity also? I mean, of course, it's a huge challenge and we have to overcome the challenge. But in the meantime, we are all actually learning a lot in terms of using digital tools. Many companies move to completely digital. We are doing this call completely digitally. So is there here in the medium term also some positive things to be expected, that we will all learn to become more digitally savvy and perhaps will change even the way we produce, the way we travel? We might travel less, do more teleconferencing. I mean, is there an opportunity here to become more efficient, but perhaps also an opportunity to reduce our climate impact by traveling less and doing more through teleconferencing?
Guntram, I would like to tell you that first, before answering to your question. I start to see a change in the way the platforms are behaving. You know, we had many discussions with the platforms over the past few months and years. I should tell you that I am pleased, and I tell them when I meet with them, I remind them their responsibility, social responsibility, which is part of their business. I remember that I even said to one of the big CEO, everything which is not forbidden is not always authorized. So it means that it's a call for responsibility. And it's true that we were looking for this behavior, to tell you the truth, over the past few years. Here they are. For this behavior, I could tell you that it will be definitely a before and an after. It will help us in the discussion we should have for the social impact or democratical impact. But let's broaden your question. Of course, we are organizing ourselves to work differently in this very situation. What makes the situation more difficult is that we are entering into this period, us, our families, our friends, our parents, and that we don't know how long it will last. And by the way, that's also what the economy do not like at all. Probably this is one of the reasons why we are suffering so much on the markets. But this being said, in between, we come back to the essential. We are careful in what we do. We are careful in using internet and the broadband. We are cautious, being more concerned with health. We are cautious in our relation with others. We are relearning how important in a society is solidarity. And yes, we are working also differently with our colleagues, with our suppliers, with our customers. So for the one who in 1993 wrote a book in France, which was called The Teleworking in France, forecasting how we could change the society by using more teleworking. Yes, I'm an optimistic, and I think that it may accelerate a better understanding and use of everything good that we can expect in the technology to continue to work, to live on a better way. Thank you. Thank you very much for organizing this first event. Maybe you will have others. But again, more than everything, thank you to allow me to share with you on a real time what we are doing for Europe and for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you. And thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.